Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Hunziker. I'm the Assistant State Section Director from UFO in LA. And with Don Waldrop being out of town, I'm the presenter for the speaker this evening, and I'm very happy to announce that we have a terrific program for you tonight. We also have many, many stars, local stars, what I call stars of ufology, people who have come here and been speakers and told incredible stories. So as I look around the room, I see a lot of interesting faces and people who've been speakers in the past. Tonight's program is extra special because I've never seen James Gilliland, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably not. And his story comes with video support, which isn't always the case. And when somebody comes to speak to our group and they have audio-visual support, it makes it extra exciting because you're seeing something that somebody else has seen and they videotaped it, and it adds validity to a story that is already hard enough to believe. This is a tough area to study, and ufology is something that we can't all admit out there in the real world that we're interested in. So without further ado, I would like to invite James Gilliland up here to tell his story. James? Okay, I'm going to leave these up here for you.
All right. Good evening. Before I start, I just wanted to say a little bit about, this isn't really about me so much. This is a journey that all of us are going to be going on pretty soon. And a lot of times when I talk about the things that I talk about, it's real important that people realize that I tell people up front that I'm not a guru. You know, I'm not, that the guru is within. It's your own inner guidance that you have to go by. And so when you look at these photos and hear this information, take it within. You know, take it within yourself and see if it resonates and feels right for you. Some people it may not, and that's okay. You know, we love you anyway. But eventually it will, you know, come to be a part of everybody's reality because it's destiny. It's where we're going as a species. It's where humanity is going. So a lot of this information is kind of cutting-edge information. It's going to go beyond the nuts and bolts. We do have the nuts and bolts as well, but it's not where I really like to focus. I like to take people beyond the nuts and bolts into a more interdimensional understanding of what's going on. And the experiences that I've had up there are so well documented. There's probably over 2,000 eyewitnesses now that have come up and seen the craft and experienced some of the spiritual phenomenon that happened up at the ranch, because it's a vortex and there's a portal there. And there's just constant activity up there. And a lot of times I tell people, rather than just believe me or the photos, come up and have your own experience. And a lot of people do. And actually there's quite a few people in the audience right now that I've seen that have been up to the ranch. If we have time, maybe we can bring them up and say a few things, but they've seen the ships and had some pretty phenomenal experiences themselves. But basically it's all about consciousness as far as the interaction with the beings that we've been working with. And their whole message, I'm going to go further in that, is they want us to rise up in consciousness. And they want us to stop warring on each other and stop warring on the planet and destroying our environment. And they've already transcended all these things that we're dealing with right now. They've gone far beyond that, and they're coming back now to help us. We're like their little brothers and sisters, you might say, that have kind of are getting ready to do a major evolutionary jump, and they're here to help us with this jump that we're going into. I'm going to shorten my presentation a little bit. I was going to show some frescoes and some cave drawings and a lot of things of that nature. I really don't want to go into the past too much. If you want to go to our website, it's all on there. You can look up and see there's countless frescoes all over Europe that have undeniable UFOs in the frescoes. And they're painted on church walls, and they're hanging in a lot of museums. And we have copies of that. We have a lot of cave drawings with UFOs in them. And so this is not a new experience, what I'm talking about. It's been happening for about 50,000 years that we know of on cave paintings. there's undeniable evidence of little guys with helmets and little antenna coming out with a ship above them, and smoke coming out of the bottom of it. So, and these are very old paintings and rock carvings or rock drawing. It goes back to if you talk to almost any culture and you talk to the elders, especially the Native American cultures, they all talk about the star nations and a time of purification that we're going to go through, and that they're going to come in and assist us in these times to help us get through. I want to go, I think we've got the sun video. Is that the first video we have on? We can go ahead and plug into that, and I want to show you a little bit about how they're helping us get through this cycle. Yeah, go ahead and plug that one in. Of the head of one of the watchers, we could see a distortion in the field and sparks, and one of the guests took this picture. You can see very clearly as you zoom in on this picture that this is one of the little probes that we have. There is a light emanating underneath this orb as it swings out behind one of the guests. We call this the dolphin probe. And you don't really see these. I can see them, but a lot of the guests, some of the guests do see them, some don't. It's real interesting. It depends on the bandwidth that you can observe. Okay, the sun, we're going through a mega solar cycle right now. It was supposed to quit almost a couple years ago, but it's still going. And what happens when you get in these major solar cycles, there's a change that happens, and it goes down the vibrational continuum, and it creates changes in consciousness. It moves down through your mental and emotional body. They've proven that when there's extreme magnetic field changes, that people go through emotional changes as well. That's Stanford research. Here's a picture of the sun. You can see all the little, here's a little cigar-shaped ship sitting out by the sun. There's all kinds of ships around the sun right now. These are NASA photos that we have. And they're coming in for these times, and they're actually blocking a lot of these events that are happening, because when these coronal mass ejections hit the Earth, it can be like toast time. And so they're like staying in between, and they've been blocking a lot of these and giving us time so we can continue to evolve. There's these solar cycle that we're in with the coronal mass ejections and the flares are creating intense weather pattern changes, an increase in earthquake and volcanic activity. All this is building. Now here's another ship here that they were saying was a meteor. You know, unfortunately it stayed there for quite a long time. And you can see how asymmetrical this is. You know, this is not a meteor. Now these ships are phenomenal size compared. We'll show you another picture here coming up, so it'll give you an idea of the size of these ships that they're seeing over and over. But I want to show you what they're doing here. I think it's on. Here's our next photo. Here's one of the ships expanding out, and it was during a coronal mass ejection and actually blocked it. And this has happened quite a bit. They're allowing here's the Earth. You can see the Earth right at the bottom right-hand corner here. And that's the sun doing a coronal mass ejection right there. My little laser. Here's the Earth. So here's the Earth in comparison to the sun. You can imagine how big these ships are. They're enormous. They're bigger than the Earth. And they're sitting there. This is another coronal mass ejection. You can see rings around this. This is another major ejection coming off the sun. And it's funny, it almost looks like a DNA helix. Now this is something real interesting. This picture right here is actually, this is the Earth right here. And see this huge field around the Earth. This is and this is going straight to the sun. This is plugged in straight to the sun. So this is another picture. This came off the Hubble. And this is actually in the constellation of Orion. And see this pouring out right here? There's a lot of stories. I think Hertak and a lot of people talk about Orion and the energies pouring out from Orion. And this guy here, they can't explain what this is. It looks like a little, it looks like a guy standing there with long hair, you know, like some kind of being. But this is Abydos. You can see here's a little cigar-shaped ship. Here's another little plane, another plane. Right here, we'll go over here. This is a helicopter. Now, people are saying the pyramids are, what, 3,500 years old. They're actually more like 77,000 years old, and they're starting to figure out. There was a time that that these ships were, we're going into the frescoes now. This is an Arabic sighting right here. You can see that there's a rocket, and here's the plumes coming out. There's a lot more. Why don't we stop this one? This is a whole lot of frescoes. This is actually Moses. See, Moses has horns. See, in the ancient times, horns were a symbol of intense spirituality. It was your connectors. And that's why the Hathors and a lot of the ancient Egyptian things had horns. But since then, they've been turned into like demonic, whatever, inferences. Why don't we go ahead and pull this one? Go ahead and pull that one. We can go on to the next footage. There's a whole lot of there's frescoes in Kosovo. There's all over the place, and they have actually ships flying by with people in them, waving down at the people down below. And it's funny. One of them's entitled "The Crucifixion." Now, this is some of the TV footage that we've got. This is just the latest one. Channel 12 came out, which is, I think, KTPV or something like that. KTTP-TV. Yeah.
In the hub of UFO activity.
Some ufologists have spent 30 years studying the strange lights near Trout Lake and the Yakima Indian Reservation. Our KPTV's David Wilson went to Mount Adams and met some folks who claim to have seen everything from extraterrestrial ships to ETs themselves. Dave?
It's a fantastic story, but the eyewitness accounts of strange luminous objects near Mount Adams are well documented. Skeptics call it nothing more than satellites or geothermal gases, but other scientists call the lights unnatural and out of the ordinary. Some folks near Trout Lake believe the sightings are visitors from other galaxies or other dimensions.
And it came and it made us turn, and it started banking, and right over here it just phased out and was gone. Made no sound whatsoever.
When James Gilliland built his country home 15 years ago, he had no idea it sat in the middle of a flight path.
A ship came right in over this field, and right in the middle of the field, powered up and just lit the whole field up.
But whoever or whatever flies overhead near the base of Mount Adams is open for debate.
Okay, here he is. See how dim he is? Look, he powers up, boom, takes off.
You just put on the afterburners.
We'll show this again later. You'll actually see it stop and power up and move on.
Hundreds of others who frequent his 70-acre property 12 miles from the mountain believe wholeheartedly the luminous lights shown here
See, it's going through the clouds, underneath the clouds.
are extraterrestrial.
The universe is filled with life. You know, it's intelligence, interdimensional, it's everywhere.
8 years ago, James first noticed the odd phenomenon, and since then, he's taped 15 hours of video. In his nonchalant manner, he recounts incredible stories.
So what's the closest you've ever seen one?
Face to face.
What's the closest you've ever seen a ship?
A ship? I've been on them twice. I probably shouldn't have said that one. They weren't ready for that. These are very, very spiritually and technologically advanced beings. They're highly evolved beings, so we have to rise to the occasion.
But when James, who, by the way, comes off as lucid, calmly tells his stories of communicating telepathically with the ETs, his claims begin to seem more outrageous.
They told me that I really needed to prepare myself on the inner levels and develop my spiritual, or let's say telepathic abilities and things of that nature, because that's how they wanted to maintain the contact.
I'm very skeptical of that.
OMSI Planetarian Director Jim Todd says the images on James Gilliland's
Okay,
video
watch this
look
footage
like
here.
ordinary satellites to him.
This right here?
Their excitement, because they're seeing something bright moving against the background of the stars. And I've seen a lot of satellites myself, and the space station, and the Mir, and the Shuttle. And they're fun to watch, they really are.
But Todd admits it's difficult to tell from the video if the
Okay,
objects
pay attention to
travel
this
like
right here. I'll tell you
satellites.
more about this. You'll see it again.
People on the nearby Yakima
This is on the mountain.
It's
landed.
Life in the sky for the last century. And more than 30 years ago, scientists from around the country began documenting the phenomenon. This report, called The Investigation of Nocturnal Light Phenomena at Toppenish, Washington, dates back to 1972 and has several detailed UFO encounters. This is just one observation made by an investigator. The two objects were apparently round with a reddish-orange glow. Movement of the objects was erratic and discontinuous. They appeared to move independently, circling and changing places in relation to one another. Another example, this sighting made in August of 1972. The light moved so fast it gave the impression of a streak. It would appear stationary for a moment and then almost instantaneously appear some distance away. Is intelligent life behind these lights? Scientists say at times their erratic actions at the very least appear purposeful. Lights have been known to follow police cars. James Gilliland believes the ETs travel interdimensionally, and to him, they aren't aliens.
I would rather see them as the greater family of man. They're our ancient ancestors.
And he says the ETs want to pass on this message.
We need to clean up our consciousness and clean up our environment and rise up and live a spiritual, natural way of life.
Scientists documenting the UFO activity say Mount Adams is one of 5 or 6 places in the nation where people tend to see a lot of strange objects in the sky. Investigators say Norway is another place where people see similar things. Some scientists are trying to prove the geology of Mount Adams is producing gases that light up the ground and the sky. But serious investigation into these lights is continuing, like for the last 30 years, and will go on until we can figure out exactly what is happening up there. So.
And James obviously knows there are a lot of skeptics out there, a lot of people wondering if ETs really exist, why haven't more people seen them?
He says simply that the world is not ready for the shock of this, that people won't be able to handle it, and that we're slowly being indoctrinated to the idea, or introduced to the idea that these things actually exist. And over time, sooner or later, they will come out for everyone to see.
Yeah, we're waiting. Open
I
arms.
want to see one.
Come visit.
Thanks, David.
Okay, that's over. The what was really interesting about that is the newscaster here. He came and I asked him. I said, "Did you show him my footage, all of the footage?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "So you showed him the footage of it landing on the mountain. You showed it flying behind the trees, underneath the clouds, making right-angle turns, all of this." And then he said they're satellites or the space shuttle. And it shocked him for a minute. He says, "You know, I did. I showed him everything." And he got caught up in the, what do you call it, the OMSI planetarium and all the big, the equipment and everything else. And he forgot what he saw. And it was just amazing how he said, "Wait a minute." And he looked at it again and he goes, "This is crazy." He said, "This is nuts." He said, "No reasonable mind could call this a satellite or a shuttle." I said, to my knowledge, they haven't put a shuttle landing site behind my backyard, or in my field. I think I would have noticed it. But, it's just amazing. This just is a little bit of what we have to deal with. But the reports they're talking about are the reports that were done by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, David Akers, Bill Vogel. I'm trying to think of the other ones. There's a lot of them that went out there, and their end document, when you read it, it says that after they did all their research on it, they said that actually everything is happening in the area. Everything from abductions to contacts to metallic craft to light spheres that seem intelligent, that are inquisitive, that follow vehicles. And right now we've got probably over 2,000 eyewitnesses, and it's just these witnesses. We have a lot of physicists that are involved too, that have come up and have seen the ships, and they said that these are definitely not ours, and they're not anything we've back engineered either, because some of them are just too big and too vast, and they do some phenomenal things that they've never experienced. But we'll show you further. They actually morph. They'll come in, one ship will come in, it'll morph into another, and as many as 4 ships we've had them morph. They make right-angle turns and go back exactly the opposite way. They'll go several thousand miles an hour and cross, and then just everything. They always respond to us down below. And I'll show you that we can document there's a definite interaction between the ships. And I've done this over and over with UFO investigators that have come up. Tom Dongo was one. John Alexander came up as well and got his sightings. And what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll tap in and I'll feel them and I'll know where they are, and I'll say they're coming in from the east, and I'll tell them what time, and they'll set their camera up and I'll tell them where to put their camera. And sure enough, at that time and that location, they'll pop. and the ship will just pop in and say hi and then disappear again. But right now they're kind of keeping their distance. With me, I've had more one-on-one experience, but with a lot of the other groups coming up there, they're showing themselves, but they're not having as close contact because there's protocols necessary that we have to meet to make these connections. And right now they're connecting with a lot of people on Earth, and they're kind of awakening, you might say, their ambassadors, and they're getting us ready to reunite with the rest of the cosmos. The resistance we've had, this has been going on for 8 years, and luckily we've had ABC come up, we've had Fox News come up. They filmed it, they aired it, and it got squashed right after it aired. So it just disappeared. It was amazing. And I'm trying to think who else. Evening Magazine came out, and then they brought their debunker at the end, which was ridiculous. He was saying they were satellites again. But I was trying to think of who else we've had out there. We've had quite a few crews out there. And even the crews, a lot of them have seen the ships come in. We had, when Evening Magazine was there, a very large orange ship just dropped down and went right over their heads and created a huge vapor trail as it went over, and then it went up. It went up and took off. And one of the guys was saying, you know, I think that possibly could have been a meteor, but I've never seen them go up. You know, and light the whole sky up like that and then make a turn and go straight up again. So there's a lot of activity. But I don't want to go into it a lot, but there is a major, it seems a movement to censor this activity because the activity is so intense in the area. And there is so much documentation in the area that even some of the UFO groups that seem to have a problem with it. I don't know. I always tell people we used to really sponsor Newfork, like Peter Davenport, and say call him if you want to report a sighting and things like that. Now we say don't call him, you know, because unfortunately they've censored it big time, and they won't look at any of the evidence, and they won't even let me speak at the conferences that they're having in Seattle. So there's something really wrong with that picture. We've tried to straighten it out and offered an olive leaf and tried to get some reasonable explanation for why they're censoring all the reports and changing reports and making slanderous statements in public concerning us. And we tried to get them to come up with some rational reason why, and we haven't had one yet. So if anybody wants to email them, go ahead and email them and see if you can get a reason why. You know, we haven't figured it out. But I think a little bit it's just like a little bit of ego drive and wanting to be the one guy in the area or something. We haven't figured out what's all behind it. But it's kind of sad that when you give people an olive leaf and you say, hey, look, you can be the guy to introduce this to the whole area. We'll give all the sightings, the credit. We don't care. We don't want the credit. We just want the information to get out. And then they turn it down. You go, well, something's wrong with this picture. So we've had other news people come out, did incredible interviews. They scanned all the photos we have. They're all ready to go forward with this. And one guy in particular, I don't want to mention any names, got picked up with a white van and taken for a ride. And that was the end of it. You know, it never got out. So it seems like they're allowing a lot of the other stuff to get out. For some reason, they're very intimidated by what's happening in our area. And you know, and we have footage of on the tapes in the back. I don't have it on this footage, but in the tapes in the back, we have footage of F-15s that are black, that nobody knows where they come from, that have come in and buzzed the house, and they come real low and shake the house up and turn around and come back. When I went on Art Bell, the morning I went on Art Bell, the two mugwort bombers came by, and real low over the house, turned, showed full bombs, everything on them, and showed us what they had, and then banked off, and then came back and shook the place up again. And then we've had countless black helicopters come around. We watched them videotape our whole place, and they came down in the field and came down about 2 feet off the ground. And they fly over on a regular basis. I actually have, you know, I'm like a crazy guy. I grab my camera, I go running out in the field, you know, and there's this black helicopter coming in. And I don't care, you know. I go, what are they going to do? Toast me? And then how are they going to explain that one? But it's kind of what happens. You got to do this without fear, and just to go after truth no matter what. And having died already about 20 years ago, I had a near-death experience and already crossed over, so I'm not really worried about that end of it. And I know there is a lot of protection if you stay on the mark. You know, if you stay on the path, there's other beings that kind of watch out after you. So you know, a lot of things have been done. We've experienced. I don't even want to go into it, but it's we've experienced quite a few things being done to vehicles. You know, tires, your lug nuts taken off, all kinds of things like that. We were out there filming one day, and it was really heard. We heard a bullet go by us one time, which was really strange. And actually, the video picked it up. You hear it go like this right by us, you know. And I going, "Do you hear that?" You know. Too much the dark side. When you go into ET stuff, there's what I call the you know, a lot of the gray experiences and some of those levels, and there's low-level contacts that are going on. And a lot of people think all reptiles are bad, all grays are bad. That's too as well, and I call that kind of low-level contact. And the contacts that we're having are the ones that are very, very advanced. They're very spiritually and technologically advanced. I asked them why they're here, if they could give me one sentence why they're here, and they said they're here to help us release the past. And they said it's because we're holding on to the past and all the old judgments and angers and wounds and traumas that we're keep recreating this future the same way. Until we change our consciousness, which is cause, that we're going to keep repeating these same cycles. So they're trying to help us spiritually and inspirationally heal our old patterns and move forward.